over mankind. Now, watch this. And they have one mind. And it's the 10 kings, the 10 horns, the 10 toes, that give their power and their strength unto the beast. Think about these words. What is it that is the strength of sin? These 10 kings give their strength to the beast. Think about this. This entire image, gold, silver, brass, and iron, is actually being held up and sustained by 10 toes. That's it. These 10 toes. So where did the stone attack it at? On the toes. And when it removed the strength of this image, they all fell. So this verse again, these shall make war with the Lamb. Think about what Jesus said. The spirit truly is willing. The flesh is weak. You know what's wrong with the flesh? It's under the bondage and the curse of the 10 commandments, which we cannot keep. And our body, our mind is constantly fighting us, wanting to, oh, I want to lie. Oh, I want to steal that. Oh, I want that. Oh, I'm not going to honor God. I'm going to honor me. We are constantly at war. And so these 10 kings, the law, are enmity against Christ. And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. Grace conquers the curse of the law. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings. Remember how this image started? The head of gold? Nebuchadnezzar, that's you. You are a king of kings. But here comes the King of kings and Lord of lords and destroys the power of the 10. The Lamb, the stone cut without hands, overcomes the 10 toes, the 10 horns, the 10 kings. I love this. Now, let's go back a little bit. There's just a piece of information that I happen to know. You've ever heard of Atlantis? Now, some say Atlantis is real, some say it's not real. What I like to do is I like to see what the scriptures have to say about that. Let's look at the idea of Atlantis, because Plato had described this, what is called this lost city. And Atlantis, I think, is important in end times prophecy. You remember it was Francis Bacon, this occultist, during the about 400 years ago, that wrote a book called The New Atlantis. And he envisioned this country across the seas that was going to rise up and bring the world into a new age of enlightenment. And many people say that began the building up of the nation that we now know as the United States of America. But this idea of Atlantis, Plato wrote about this, and he wrote about it as if it were true. Here's what he described. He described this massive kingdom that was sunk under the water under a great flood. So let's think about this for a minute. Let's think about, was there a time on the earth when the world was overcome with a flood? Yes, Genesis 6 and Genesis 7. Here's something interesting that Plato described. He described this island, or this nation, this kingdom of Atlantis, as being partitioned into 10 islands with 10 kings that ruled over them. And these 10 kings had one king that was superior to all the others. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that describes what we see in the scriptures as the world before the flood. And you know, the sons of God and the daughters of men and the giants and all the things they did, and God destroyed the earth by water and destroyed all of these. Well, Freemasonry, the New Age movement, Manly Hall talks about this. He says Atlantis is a symbol. Atlantis is a type of this kingdom rising again in the last days from the depths of the sea in the last days. And these 10 kings and this one great king taking rule over mankind again. It's referred to in the Grail legends as the once and future king. Here is an image of It's not actually a photograph I took of Atlantis, all right? Just an artist's conception of what Plato was drawing. Now, I'm going to take that concept and let's go look at something that I've been studying here for about the past year. It's very, very difficult to understand, and I don't encourage you to do this. But in response to some of the teachings that I have seen from the Hebrew roots, I've noticed that they've gotten it directly from, not the scriptures, but a book called the Zohar. The Zohar is Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. It is the religion that God told the Israelites not to learn from the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and all these other ites in the land of Canaan. And the Jews went in there, and since they didn't destroy them all, they became thorns in their sides, and they learned their religions. And what they did over time was they engrafted this paganism into Judaism. And so around, I don't know, 700-800 years ago, something like that, they wrote this very mystical book called the Zohar. And in the Zohar, they teach of what's called a tree of life. Now, here's the problem. There were two trees in the midst of the garden. There was a tree of life and a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, did you know that the Kabbalah tree of life actually has good on one side and evil on the other? The male, the female, the hard and the soft, they actually have that in there. So it's not really the tree of life. It's the other one. And here's a picture, here's a graphic of what's called the Sephiroth, the tree of life. I want you to notice that, of course, there's this winding snake in it. That ought to tell you where the religion comes from. And I want you to notice that you have all these lines going back to these circles and moving around in these circles and so on. I'll just tell you there's 22 of these lines. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There's 22 amino acids that make up your DNA, that write the letters of your DNA. And just throw that in there because that's eventually where we're going to go. But I want you to look at these circles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these circles. Here is what Manly Hall, this is how he describes what those circles are. Take a look at this. He says the Sephirothic tree is sometimes depicted as a human body, thus more definitely establishing the true identity of the first or heavenly man, Adam Kadmon, the idea of the universe. I'll just stop right here. Adam Kadmon is the Antichrist. That's who that is. Just when you read that, Kabbalah is so hard to understand, but what little I get from it, Adam Kadmon is the Antichrist. So let's move on. The 10, notice they call them divine globes. These are spirits, not humans. The 10 divine globes, Sephiroth, are then considered as analogous to the 10 sacred members and organs of the protogonos. The grand man, thus conceived, is the gigantic image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, with head of gold, arms and chest of silver, body of brass, legs of iron, and feet of clay. The medieval Kabbalist also assigned one of the 10 commandments and a 10th part of the Lord's Prayer in sequential order to each of the 10 Sephiroth. So what is it that all of these are referencing? And remember, in dealing with this fourth kingdom, what I'm showing you is that whether it's Masonry, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, or Seventh-day Adventists, any kind of work salvation, the New Age movement, magic, witchcraft, it doesn't matter. All of these are leading to the same kingdom, the same God over all of these. Many roads lead to the same God, the Antichrist, Adam Kadmon, the grand man, is what he's referred to in Manly Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And so Manly Hall, gathering his information from all of the mystery cults of the world, started putting everything together, and he's basically said, see all these little groups over here? He said they're all pretty much part of a mystery cult, and even though they call it this over here and that over there, he said they're basically speaking of the one gigantic mystery. And it all references the fourth kingdom. And he's saying the 10 globes that are on the Sephiroth are 10 divine kings, not human ones, spirit kings, that are analogous to the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw, the 10 toes, so that the Sephiroth, those 10 circles, are the 10 toes, the 10 horns, the 10 kings, and even, he said, the Kabbalists, the medieval Kabbalists, assigned one of these circles to each one of the 10 commandments. There's the connection right there. Because the beast, the grand man, is the man of sin. He is the culmination of everybody's disobeying the 10 commandments. And since they disobey the 10 commandments and they are not redeemed by the blood of the Lamb of the New Testament, they are going to fall under the curse and the dominion of the Antichrist and those 10 kings. I strongly, and I'm still working on this, I strongly encourage you, if anyone comes to you and says, I know you're a Christian, but the way to really please God is by keeping His commandments. It's a setup. It's a setup. Should you commit adultery? No, of course not. Do everything you can. But don't rely upon you doing for your salvation. That's a trap. It's already been done by Jesus Christ. So let's look at this number 10 for a minute. 10 is the number for dominion. We have, watch this, okay? We have 10 toes on this image. And let's say, you remember when you were kids and you used to wrestle one another, and whoever was standing on top of the other kid, that kid won. Okay? Because I own you. I'm standing on you. I own you. I win. Whether it's King of the Hill or whatever it is we used to play. Okay, with 10 toes represent dominion. God told Joshua, every place the sole of your foot touches, I will give unto you. You're going to own that. That's dominion over you. So these 10 represent the 10 horns, which are 10 kings. Horns represent power. We'll see that. These are 10 kings. So it represents dominion. Incidentally, but not accidentally, the first king we find recorded in the Scriptures is in Genesis chapter 10. Guess who he is? Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was, let's count, Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. How many kingdoms, how many cities did he have? 1, 2, 3, 4. He had 4 of them. So here we have in Genesis 10, the first king, the first kingdom, and it's 4 kingdoms that he rules over. Nimrod is a prototype of the beast of the last days who comes as a result of this 4th kingdom that comes to the earth in the last days. Now let's look at Exodus chapter 34, verse 28. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Notice that 4 times 10, 40. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And so here is God's law over people. And again, don't get me wrong. The law is wonderful. Trying to keep the 10 commandments, that's just good. It's good advice. Problem is, we can't do it. You might not have ever cheated on your wife. But if you ever looked at your neighbor's house and said, you know,